The touch that stayed with me. I didn't expect to feel anything when I first stepped into Silver Ridge. It was supposed to be routine. Another burned out building, another blank canvas. But the moment I arrived, I felt it. The silence. Thick and clinging. Not the peaceful kind. It was the kind that pressed against your chest and reminded you something had been taken from this place. The air still smelled faintly of ash, even months after the wildfire. Homes were empty. Windows stared back like hollow eyes. And at the center of it all was the scorched skeleton of the community center. What used to be the town's heart. That was what I came to rebuild. Not with emotion, just blueprints and tools. I didn't know anyone there, but I noticed him right away. Jake. He didn't introduce himself, but he didn't need to. Everyone else looked at him like he was holding what was left of the town together. There was soot still stuck in the laces of his boots, and a tiredness in his eyes I didn't have the right to understand. He watched me a lot those first few days. Never rude, just guarded. Like I was a question he wasn't sure he wanted answered. The town barely spoke to me at first. Some were polite. Most were distant. I didn't blame them. I was just the outsider sent in with funding and forms, here to build something shiny in place of what they lost. So I listened. I walked the ruins slowly every morning. I ran my hands along the cracked brick. I peeled back layers of soot with care. Not because I had to, but because it felt wrong not to. I kept finding things. Little remnants. A melted pair of keys. A child's drawing sealed in a heat-warped folder. A rusted coffee tin filled with thumbtacks and pushpins someone had clearly used every day. I kept them all. Over time, people started to soften. They saw I wasn't just here to build. I was trying to understand. Jake stayed quiet, but he was always around. Fixing things without being asked. Carrying heavy loads before I could reach for them. He never said much, but I noticed the small ways he paid attention. If it rained, he'd leave a tarp where I worked. If I looked tired, there'd be coffee in a clean mug left near my sketchpad. One afternoon, I found myself studying the place longer than usual. The foundation was set. The frame was starting to rise. It was late, and the mountains were catching the last of the sun. I stood on the second step of the new entryway, staring out over the town, breathing in the stillness. Jake came up beside me. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. For a while, we just stood there, shoulders nearly touching. He reached for the notebook in my hand and our fingers brushed. He could have pulled away. But he didn't. Not right away. Just a second. But it changed everything. Not in a loud movie scene way, more like a subtle shift. Like when a room warms just a few degrees and you suddenly realize you're no longer cold. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of nerves or uncertainty, but because I felt awake. For the first time in a long time, something in me stirred that had been quiet for years. After that, the air between us changed. He still didn't talk much. Neither did I. But the silence felt different. Comfortable. Close. I started to look for him without realizing it. In the way I paused before beginning a task. Wondering if he'd show up to help. In the small notes I'd leave on materials, knowing he'd read them. In the way I stood just a little longer, after the sun dipped down, just in case he was nearby. And sometimes, he was. We never talked about what we were. There weren't big moments. No grand confessions. But we both knew. It lived in the glances that lasted too long. The shared quiet after a long day. The small touches that lingered just enough to say everything. One evening, while we stood beneath the nearly finished roof frame, he finally said something.
You make it feel like it might be okay again. That was it. Just that. But it meant more to me than any declaration, because I hadn't come to Silver Ridge looking for love. And he hadn't stayed there hoping for it. But somehow, in the ash and the silence, we found something neither of us were expecting. I didn't need a label. I didn't need to know what came next. All I knew was that in a town that had lost so much, I found something quietly beautiful. Something that felt like hope, wrapped in the warmth of someone who finally saw me. I didn't need more. Just that feeling, and him beside me. If this story touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe. Part 2 is coming soon, and it gets deeper.